as she said, my name is Webster. I've been involved in the pro-life movement since I was a freshman in high school, so going on 6 years now. I just joined our little homeschool club. It was really fun. We didn't do too much, and I didn't know too much about it, but we just continued to do little prayer things, and every now and again we would do like small events, and it was super fun. But then as I got further in high school, I got more interested in like what the pro-life movement was, and I had my good friend who really guided me in all of the steps that I took. So when I was a senior, he had asked me if I'd be willing to lead one of the pro-life clubs, and I was like, I don't think I can do that. But he was very encouraging, and he stood by my side through every step of it. And I've now been a president of 2 different clubs, and still currently am. It's all because of him. And then last year, he decided that I needed to go even further, and that I needed to be a part of the National Leaders Collective. And I was like, I really don't know about that one. But as you know, I did it anyways, and now here I am. So yeah, I'm a first-year member of the National Leaders Collective, and I'm a William Wilberforce Fellow currently. It's been super fun, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So throughout the past 6 years of being in the movement, I've gotten to see many different areas of the movement, which is really cool. From Standing With You, from 40 Days for Life, obviously, Students for Life, Live Action. I've gotten to see many areas of the pro-life movement. But 40 Days for Life has always been one that's really interested me because it's kind of a whole different aspect of the pro-life movement. It kind of shines the light on the fact that we can't actually be the pro-life generation unless we're actually praying, because the only way that we can have a pro-life generation is if we allow ourselves to be tools, to be used as tools from God. So it kind of around my senior year, I got this weird feeling that I could never do enough. I always wanted to be tabling more, and I always wanted to be out talking to more people, and I always I felt like it was never enough. But kind of looking into 40 Days for Life, I think this organization is a good example of that. Sometimes what we need to be doing in the movement is sitting in our homes and praying. And I always thought that was really powerful. It's not always about going out and doing more and talking to more people and exhausting ourselves. Sometimes it's about just having the patience to pray. And that's always kind of really struck me about the organization. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about prayer then, because it's so important in our movement. So I'm going to try my best to encourage you guys to keep praying outside of the 40 Days for Life. A lot of times prayer can feel very empty. We can feel like we're not being heard. I remember actually one time I was going through a really hard time in my life, and I was talking to a priest, and I was like, why do we pray? If God knows exactly what's going to happen, and we're supposed to desire His will, then why do we pray? What sense does that make? And he said that no person that has a good prayer life has not asked themselves that question. And he told me, you've now started your path to good prayer life because you've asked those questions. So I was like, well, good. I'm glad I'm in a good place. So yeah, here we are. I asked those questions, and I decided that I was going to listen to his answers, and we were going to figure this out. So one thing that he always told me that really stuck with me was that it's actually a quote, and I'm not sure who it's quoted from, but it's actually that we cannot love what we do not know, and we cannot serve what we do not love. So we can't have a prayer life unless we know what we're praying to, and of course that's God, or Christ. But we can't serve Him unless we love Him. And again, we can't love Him unless we know Him. So the first step to be able to be good in our prayer is to actually know Him. And in order to do that, we have to read our Bible or read the Gospels, because that's how He revealed Himself to us. So He got me this little Bible, and I started reading the Gospels, and it was very helpful for me because it made it feel more like I understood a little bit more about who I was talking to in my prayer. I think it's important to know that God is our Father, and just like any good father, He wants us to run to Him, and He wants us to speak to Him. And He doesn't always, it's not like He has a strict plan on how everything is going to go. it's not like this is going to happen and I know that, and that's why we can pray, because he allows us to have free will, which is the greatest act of love that he could have offered us. So he told me to think of it as our prayers are helping him write what's going to come next. It's not that he already knows what's happening, or he does know, obviously, but it's not like he's like, well, this is going to happen, so why are you asking me to change it? Because you should just want my will. No, he can use our prayers to write what's going to happen, and that's why we pray. And then the priest then continued to tell me that, because I was explaining, I was like, but it just feels like he doesn't like want to hear from me. Like, I feel like I need to have the best prayer to be able to talk to him, and I haven't perfected my prayer, so I feel like I just shouldn't talk to him. I was telling him I was really struggling to pray my rosary, especially because I was like, it just feels like I'm repeating prayers. They don't seem to me to mean anything. It's just a prayer that I say because it feels like a chore that I have to do. And he said, that's okay, because you're still doing it. And he told me that to think of it as, again, we're children of God, and God always wants to hear from his children. But he told me to imagine myself as a little infant. And every time I try to pray, no matter how good it is, I'm placing myself in his arms. And just like a small child, my small act of wanting to pray is me gazing into his eyes. And no matter how perfect or imperfect it is, our Father falls in love with that. He told me, imagine you have a small child in your arms, and they look up and they make eye contact to you. He said what like a beautiful moment it always is. No matter how long or short that like contact is, you just fall in complete love with them. And he said that our prayer journey is learning how to keep that eye contact for longer. And the better we do, the further we get in being able to like hold that contact longer. Obviously, the more he loves it. But just because we just gaze at him every now and again doesn't mean that he doesn't love that. And that story really, really stuck with me, because I, of course, love babies. And yeah, I just imagined, he is our Father and he does love us, and he's always wanting us to just look at him. And if that's all we can do, then that's great, as long as we're trying to always do better. That's what matters. And I was like, well, I feel like finally I can say my prayer with a little more meaning, but why isn't he answering me? Why do I feel like I have no answers? Why do I still feel alone? And he said, is he not answering, or are you not listening? And I was like, well, I thought I was a good listener. But it was a really good point, though, because the more I thought of that, what he had told me, the more I realized, especially in our generation, we fill our lives with so much noise. Whether it's just being out and about or making our lives busy, or if we're at home, we're listening to a podcast, or if we're in our car, we're listening to music. We never allow ourselves to just sit in silence. And that's when God answers us, is when we're in silence, when we can, have good thoughts. And so I realized that my life, there was no such thing as silence in my life. So it was just the fact that I wasn't listening. He was trying to answer me and I ignored him. And I was trying to have a one-sided friendship with God, because I wanted to ask him all these things and I wanted to talk to him, but I never allowed him to talk to me back, because I was always worried, well, what if it's not what I want to hear? So I have a quick little story. A little while ago, I was struggling with a big decision that I had to make, and he had kind of guided me to the decision that I should make, and it freaked me out a little bit. It was a really hard decision to make, and I was really worried of the judgment of others if I made that decision, but it kind of somewhat felt right, and I just didn't know what to do about it. I was stressing about it really badly, and I was praying about it, but I, again, was not listening, and I was sitting, and I was actually babysitting, and I was cleaning the kitchen of the family's house that I was babysitting at, and I was like, maybe this is what he meant by we never listen. It's like, maybe I just need to sit in silence, and I just need to listen. So I did. I stopped what I was doing, and I sat on the porch, and I just sat, and I observed the things around me, and I just tried to really listen. But it's not just like listening and expecting him to tell you exactly what it is. It's actually having him guide you through the right decision is what listening to him is. So the more I had thought about the one decision, the more I thought about, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do all of these things. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be really hard, but it's a short amount of time, so maybe I just suffer through it and do it anyway. But then I would think about maybe the other decision that I could make, and it'd bring a sense of peace. And the only worry that I had in that decision was the judgment of others in making that decision. And then I realized that maybe that was my answer. Maybe that sense of peace was my answer, was that was the decision to make because God allowed me to have peace in that decision. And after doing that, I was like, gosh, why don't I do this more often? I feel so much better. But it was just very helpful that we can just, sometimes we get frustrated because we feel like we're not being heard, but really we are being heard and we're being answered. It's just that we're not listening. So I have one last story to tell you quick about being hopeful that our prayers are always being heard. And it's actually a story about my great-grandparents. So both of my parents came from very broken families. My mom was conceived in a teen pregnancy. She never met her dad. Her dad lived his whole life in prison. He was a drug addict. And his mom always told her growing up that if abortion was more of an option, she would have aborted my mother. So obviously I'm very grateful that she's here. My dad, he has one brother who's much younger than him, who my grandmother always voiced that he was not planned. My dad's parents are also divorced, and my dad had caught his mother cheating on his father when he was 8 years old. They ended up getting into a nasty divorce, and it was really, really hard for my dad. So they both came from very broken families. Far down the lines of both of my families, there's no such thing as a good marriage, and it's very sad. But my mom, they were also both they were Christian, but only kind of by name. They didn't really practice any particular Christianity. They were just kind of believed in God, but didn't really know who he was. So when my mom was older, she had met my dad, and they had decided to obviously date. And the one thing that they shared in common was that when they both decided very early in their relationship that if they got married, they were going to be together for the rest of their life, no matter what happened, because they never wanted what they went through to ever be further down the line of the family. They wanted to be the renewal of both family names. So they agreed, they got married, and they had 3 children, and there was a good friend of my dad who actually started questioning him about his faith and kind of challenging him. And my dad he likes a good challenge. So my dad took him up on the challenge. He was actually quizzing him about Catholicism. And my dad grew up with this strange hatred for Catholicism, but he never knew why. He was just told that Catholics are bad. We don't interact with them. They're bad. So he would start trying to prove this guy wrong. So he would, pose these different things about Protestantism that just didn't really make sense to him, and he was really, kind of asking him questions, and my dad would go try to find the answers, and he never really could. Catholicism always seemed to win. So my dad would get aggravated, and he would start really reading his Bible and really doing his studying, and he realized that everything he found backed up the Catholic Church. He had started telling my mom about it, and my mom was very scared. She also grew up really hating the Catholic Church. She knew her mom would be very upset with her if she ever decided to convert to Catholicism, and so she was very scared. She was like, I don't know what you're thinking. This is kind of crazy, but, I guess if this is what you think's best, I'm going to let you lead me like a good husband should. So then eventually they decided to convert to Catholicism. And my mom had her 4th baby at this time, and they all were about to get baptized into the Catholic Church, and my parents were about to receive confirmation. My grandma had went up to her and had given her a baptismal gown. My mom was like, it was for an infant, and my mom was very confused. She was like, why are you handing me this? My mom later found out that my great-grandparents, her father's parents, who she never knew, were actually very devout Catholics. They were always prayed for their son, who was her father, and always prayed for my mom. And when they were getting a lot older and knew that they were never going to be able to see my mom again, they had handed my grandma this baptismal gown. And they had asked that when my mom was of the appropriate age, that she that be her gift from her grandparents. Well, my mom was very confused. She didn't know this about her grandparents, but it was a special gift. Well, multiple years later, they had 13 children, and the rest of us were then baptized in that very baptismal gown. It was a girl gown, and yes, the boys did get baptized in it, but it's okay. We just don't tell them that. But I think that this is a really good example of maybe they had sat there for many years, and maybe they prayed for their son to change his ways and be a better man and be able to be a good father to his daughter. And maybe they prayed for my grandma's conversion, and they probably prayed for my mom. And maybe they felt that same feeling of their prayers were never being answered. And they never really got to see the fruit of those prayers that they prayed so endlessly. But now I hope and I pray that they're sitting in heaven looking down on the 13 great-grandchildren that they have, and the Catholic family that their granddaughter has now raised and have now baptized in the very baptismal gown that they gifted them. I think it's a good example that we may not ever see the fruits of our prayers here, but hopefully one day in heaven we will. It's not that they're not being heard, it's just that maybe they're not being answered in the ways that we expected them to. But it, again, does not mean that they're not ever being heard. So I hope that this story kind of encourages you to never stop praying and to always work on perfecting your prayer, to always work on being better children of God, because He is our Father and He does want us to always run to Him with both the good and the bad. And it's our duty as children to be good daughters and sons of His, and to never stop running to Him. So thank you.
Wonderful.